Timber, I know what we're talking about, though. We're talking about the art of discernment, right? The art of discernment of how to cut through the noise, how to hear the still small voice, how to know when to go right, when to turn left, when to sit down, when to speak, when to be quiet, right? The art of discernment is what we're talking about. And you can only tap discernment, have discernment, when you have wisdom. Right? You can only find discernment when you are willing to be quiet and be silent and listen to the still small voice. So that is what we have been talking about this month, the art of discernment. And today I am talking about cutting through the noise. There is so much noise in the world. There is so much. It is a cacophony of sound and bleeps and beeps and alarms. And, just even in the house, there's like the alarms and the smoke alarm and the phone alarms and the this and the that. And my mom's alarm goes off at 6 o'clock every day to remind her that the trash needs to go out in her old apartment in Phoenix from over a year ago. And it creates this sound, right? There's just so much noise that happens in our worlds, right? And how do we cut through that noise? How do we hear? How do we listen to that still small voice when there's so much going on? And so let's talk about this, right? Because Waymaker is talking about this light in the darkness, right? The light in the darkness, that God is the Waymaker. God is the light in the darkness. And that light, it never goes away. It is always there. And many times, our focus is caught up in the darkness. Our focus and our attention, our emotions, our energy, our lives are ensnared in the darkness and the noise, right? In the coming and going and the noise and the noise. And if we are to move through this time of increased turbulence, right? Increased turbulence, we have got to move from a place of discernment because things are not what they appear, right? And things that appear are not what it is. Right? And there's a lot of noise and a lot of talking and a lot of sound, but we're not really hearing, right? Because we're not really listening. And so that's what this is about, cutting through the noise. And so when I think about noise, right, the sound, the things that keep us from hearing on the inner, there are a few different ways that noise happens or shows up in our lives. So there can be the noise of other people. Right? And when I say the noise of other people, I don't mean just them making a lot of noise, right? People around us. But there can be a sort of a noise of other people's demands on our time, right? Other people's demands and expectations and what they expect and what they want and what their plan is and what their agenda is, right? And there can be a lot of noise. And sometimes that noise can be quiet, right? But you feel it energetically. Right, you feel it energetically. It's like, okay, I know we're in this meeting, but I feel like there's an agenda, right? There's multiple people that have an agenda, right? There's something else going on, and so that creates a sort of psychic noise, a silent noise, if you will, right? An energetic noise, right? People's expectations, what they want you to be, how they want you to be, how they want you to show up, right? When I came in the door, someone greeted me and said, "Oh my God, it's so good. I mean, look at this. You're here." I've had a few people say, "Look, you just started your own thing and you're here." And I'm like, yeah, because I had to listen to the still small voice within me, not the noise that was outside of me wanting me to be and show up and perform in a different way, right? I had to choose the still small voice, yes? And so other people's expectations and demands, at a certain point, you got to decline it. Yes, you got to decline it. And then there's another kind of noise. There's a noise that happens in our own minds, and usually it is as a result of these other people. Many times our parents, our programming, our paradigms, our beliefs, our stories, right? And then we have these soundtracks that go in our own mind, right? These plays that play out in our own mind, these stories that unfold in our own mind about, we're not good enough, or we didn't do this enough, or we should have done less of that, or I'm taking up too much space, not taking up enough space. Right? All the things that we put ourselves through, feeling guilty about what we didn't do or what we did do or what we want to do or didn't do or gonna do, right? Like all these things get in our minds and they just become this internal noise, this internal chatter that is just going and going and going and going. And so you have the external energetic noise and sound, the physical sound and the noise, and you have this internal, right, where that monkey mind is just going crazy inside. And wrapped up in all of that is what Ernest Holmes called the race consciousness, the collective consciousness, right? Because there's a collective, as human beings on the planet, there's a collective consciousness that Jung also talked about, this collective, our collective beliefs, our collective fears, our collective dreams, our collective hopes, our collective desires, right? The collective, even falsehoods, right, that we buy into, that we've chosen to buy into, right? And right now, all of this is happening at the same time, and then it's all amplified by media and social media, right? I truly believe that what we're seeing now is not, this is not new. Like some of the things that we're seeing now, the turbulence that we're seeing now is not new. It's just uncovered, right? It's amplified. And it's amplified to give us a choice. Who are we? Right? What are we choosing? What do we give our consent to? What are we saying no to? Yes, it's uncovered, it's amplified. You know, just like in your own personal practice, you know how in your own life, when you've taken, particularly those of you who've taken certificated classes will have this experience. You go into Beyond Limits or Foundations or Practitioner 1, those are the classes that really trigger a lot of stuff. But you go into these classes, right, and you've made a commitment to leave behind the old story, to break beyond limits, to know more and more and experience more and more of capital T truth. And when you make that commitment and you cross the threshold into the class, what happens? All this stuff starts coming up, right? Stuff starts coming up. And sometimes it can look like, your car gets stolen, or something else happens, or an illness happens, or a relationship falls apart, or a relationship falls together, right? All these things start to unfold when you step into this commitment to be light, right? This commitment to know truth. It's called, old school science of mind, folks call it chemicalization, right? Everything that is unlike the truth that you are seeking at a deeper level has to come up to be healed, right? And so you step into this class and all this stuff comes up and it's just crazy, right? It's crazy, all the things that come up. And eventually, though, what is happening is this chemicalization is happening to force things to your awareness, force things out of your consciousness into your conscious awareness so you can see them. And many times they're amplified, right? They're larger than life. And they're amplified, yes? So that we can see it and we can heal it. And that is what is happening collectively. Right now, there's so much noise because there is a movement of greater light that wants to be born on the planet. There is a movement of greater truth that wants to surge through each of us. There's a movement of pure spirit that wants to express itself, and it has to bring up everything unlike itself. So we can make a choice. We can be awake and say, yes, please, more of that. Or no, please, I am not participating in that. But we can't make a choice when it's hidden, right? You can't make a choice about what you're going to do when it's unclear. You can't make a choice when it's just sort of a quiet white noise, right? You can't make a choice at that point. When it gets blaring and loud, then you got to decide, do I turn the volume down or do I just let it keep blasting? Are y'all following what I'm saying? Yes? So this is where we are right now in this collective. The noise is desiring our attention. It is magnetic. It is trying to get us caught up in this swirl. And this collective consciousness is a swirl of fear, predominantly fear right now. We could choose love because that's part of the collective consciousness. But right now, what's up in our world is fear and actions motivated by fear, right? Because when you see domination, when you see corruption, when you see violence, that is fear expressing itself. It is fear expressing itself, no matter who's doing it. It is a fear-based response, yes. And what Spirit is calling us to and what we're calling ourselves to and what the world is asking us to do is to choose love, right? To listen to that still small voice that is the light in the darkness that has never gone away, will never go anywhere. It is always there. It is waiting our attention, our focus for us to turn to it, right? Right? Light in the darkness. Light in the darkness. And so this is what is happening right now. In Scripture, in Kings chapter 19, verse 12, Elijah says that God, you don't find God in the wind or in the earthquake or any of those places, but in the fire, but in the still small voice. Right? God is not in the wind or the earthquake, it's in the still small voice. Right? That voice of spirit that is within our hearts. And so, how do we cut through the noise? Like, what do we do? Yeah, what do we do? So the first thing is that we have to physically move away from it. I liken it to, you know how you're if you ever have been to like a house party where it was like super, a lot of noise, a lot of music, and you have to yell to talk to each other, right? There's some restaurants like that, actually. One of my favorite restaurants I love, but it's so loud. Like you have to yell to try to talk to each other, right? And the amount of energy it takes to try to talk over that noise. And for a little while, it's good, it's fun, it's fine. Depending on, what else you got going on. It could be like you're all vibing with that. But sometimes in that party and all of that noise, just imagine like going out on the front porch of that house and just taking a breath, right? In the cool air and the relief that you feel. And your nervous system slows down and your heart rate slows down, right? And it's like, I can hear myself think. Ever happened to you? Yeah? Well, that's what is required right now, for you to find those moments to get out on the porch, right? To get out of the party, to get away from that and take a breath, right? Get outside. As they say online, touch grass, right? You've been inside too long. You've been on the computer too long. Those of you with young people in your homes have heard that, right? Touch grass, people, right? That's such an actually powerful statement, because actually touching grass, especially if you're barefoot, is grounding. Right? So the kids are speaking truth even they don't know it, right? Like it's grounding. It's getting your feet on bare grass, on the ground, on the earth, so you can ground into it. So you feel you're energetic, connected. You're connected to the earth. You're connected to something larger, and it begins to soothe and regulate the nervous system, right? It begins to soothe and create that dopamine, that blissful feeling, right, by being grounded, by touching grass. So that is one way to really cut the noise, is just physically get yourself extracted from whatever the situation is, whether it's a heated argument with your loved one, whether it's conflict in your home, whether it's coming home from work and you have all the things going on your mind. My executive clients, now that many people are back in the office, what they're finding is that segue from being at work where there's all this stuff happening and then coming into the house, like there needs to be some kind of transition, right? Some transitional space, like get outside of the noise, physically get away from it. Another way that we cut through the noise is we have to also mentally get away from it, right? We have to mentally get away from it. This is where our practice comes in, our spiritual practice, right? This is where we sit and we have our meditation, our contemplation, our whatever it is, qigong, whatever it is that allows the mind to begin to calm, right? The mind to begin to not flatline, that's not what we want, but, it's like that internal chatter, right? That monkey mind, right? That monkey mind that is like, oh, look over here, da, 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 da. And, now there's so many, there's a prevalent diagnosis of ADHD, which is the brain's wired to, it's hard to get focused. Yes, and God is greater than that, right? Getting anchored, getting focused, doing the meditation begins to rewire and rework the brain and the neural pathways, right? So that you can focus a bit longer, so that you can have mastery over what's going on in your mind, right? The intrusive thoughts that want to break through and break out and break into action. We have enough intrusive thoughts walking around, right? We just look at our world and we see a lot of intrusive thoughts happening, yes? And playing out. And so get thee to a meditation practice, right? Get thee to a practitioner, right? Get thee to a sit down and be quiet. Yes? So the mind calms. Are y'all still following me? Yeah? Ernest Holmes says that intuition, and because when you're meditating more, when you're in that space of listening, of the mind calming, that is again where you begin to hear the voice of God. When you're less engaged with the noise out there, the voice of God is more prevalent, right? And that discernment is also intuition. And Ernest Holmes says intuition is God in man. It is God in woman. It is God in humans, and it's revealing the realization of the inner being. Right? Your intuition is God within you. Many times when I've had folks who work for me in my business, what I do is I will ask them, and those of you who work with me know this, what I will do is ask them intuitively what they think about something, right? Intuitively, what do they think? Does that sound familiar? Okay. And I do that to see sort of where are they in their discernment, right? Like where are they? Because discernment does not require a lot of knowledge about things, right? Discernment, it requires you to be knowledgeable about the interior, about God, right? So many times I'll ask folks who work with me a question about something they don't have all the details. I don't need you to have the details. I'm asking you intuitively, what do you think, right? Intuitively, what are you getting, right? Because you don't need details to hear God, right? So it helps me sort of gauge like where the person is. Right, and are they tapped in? Are they able to tap in? And it also I do want to hear. I actually want to hear where they are and what they think. But it can be a difficult question for people because they're like, wait a second, I don't know about this kind of marketing, and I'm like, you don't need to know. Just intuitively, what do you think? Right? What do you feel? Yeah. And so really moving to that place where we begin to get rid of the mental clutter so that we can really get in touch with that divine wisdom that is already within us. It's loaded and coded into ourselves. And so the third thing I want to talk about is silence, right? This is how you cut through the noise, right? Obviously disengaging from the noise physically, get away from it, touch grass. And then the mental clutter, right? Getting rid of it, your meditation practice, that kind of thing. And then cultivating silence. And here's what I'm finding. It is harder and harder for us to be silent. It is more and more uncomfortable for us to be silent. So think about it for yourself. How, when you are in your home, in your house, how frequently are you able to just let it be silent? No TV, no radio, no nothing, right? Or do anything where silence is required. Yes? So we have this discomfort with silence, which is why many people don't meditate. They're we want to do things, right? We want to do stuff. So I want to do a walking meditation. I want to do a swimming meditation. I want to do an eating meditation, right? Instead of being silent, because silence feels uncomfortable. And Thich Nhat Hanh says silence is essential. We need silence just as much as we need air, and just as much as plants need light. Right? We need to be silent, to be quiet, to have quiet. And I'm a person that likes a lot of silence. I like silence. I like quiet. Yeah. And so I invite you into, if you are feeling a discomfort with silence, asking, what is the discomfort? Right? Why am I feeling uncomfortable? What am I afraid might emerge in my consciousness if I sit quietly? Right? If I'm not engaged with my phone, if I'm not engaged online, if I'm not engaged with another person, if I'm not chitting and chatting or whatever, what am I afraid might emerge if I am silent? Right? And find ways to cultivate silence and be okay with it. Right? Because what the world wants, what the collective wants is this, is for us to be addicted to the news cycle, the chirps, the prompts, all the things that's showing up on your screen. Like the world wants us to be addicted to that, because as long as we are addicted to the external noise, we will never hear the still small voice. As long as we're addicted to the external noise, we're easy to control. Just put another circus in front of us, right? Put another shiny object in front of us. Put another thing in front of us that's louder than the last thing. Then do a series of really loud things, right? And then we're off and running. We're off and running. We're off center. We're out of alignment, right? Where the tail is wagging the dog in our lives because we're driven by these other things, whether it's a job, a relationship, social media, politics, whatever it is. Whatever it is, it's all the same, right? And so what we're asked to do right now, and what we're called to do right now, and what I'm inviting you into right now, is to get to silence and stillness and spirit and the presence of God that is within your own being. That is the most powerful place to be. to be anchored in the rock, to be unmoved by what is going on. And then no one can overtake you. No one can overthink you. No one can force you into something when you're your own person, because you realize that you are made in the image and likeness and not of God, that you are God's, right? You remember who you are and whose you are. And when you know that, you can't be ensnared by all the noise that's going on. You can't be moved off center, right? Because you're anchored in the absolute truth of your being. Oh. Rumi says that silence is the language of God. All else is a poor translation. All else is a poor translation, right? So I invite you this week to really be in silence, to really cut through the noise in your own life and all the stuff that's going on. And it's hard because we care, right? We care what's happening in the world. We want to see what's happening in the world. It's easy to get hijacked. But let me just tell you one more time, I say this all the time. With all that is going on in the world politically and socially, the upheaval that is happening, if we are not centered, right? If we are not centered in the truth that does not move, we tip over into the consciousness that is propagating all of this stuff. We tip over into the fear, right? And so we see a lot of kingdom one. You've heard me talk about kingdom one, right? Life is happening to me. All these things are happening to me, right? The government's doing this. These people are doing that. These people are doing this, and this is happening, right? That is kingdom one consciousness. And when you are then on Facebook or wherever you are talking about, well, you know that they're going to do this, and now they're going to take away our this, and now this is going to happen, that is a response that's also in Kingdom One. What you're doing is strengthening Kingdom One consciousness on the planet, right? And so what I keep saying here is disengage from the madness, disengage from the noise, and look at what's going on from a space of witnessing. Doesn't mean you agree, doesn't mean you give consent, but you cannot change anything from the consciousness with which it was created. You just amplify it, right? So all my beloveds who are on Facebook and they're spewing all this stuff and whatever their political beliefs are, and they're saying all this stuff and they're singing to the choir and they're chanting to the choir and they're shouting to the choir, all you're doing is you're in Kingdom One, propagating Kingdom One. Right? Because that response is all Kingdom One, right? Someone's doing something to me, I'm going to fight back. Someone's doing something to me, I'm going to, right? No, get anchored in truth and spirit, and it may mean that you don't respond, you pray, right? It may mean that you decide, you know what, I'm not going to respond to this. What I'm going to plant every day on my page online, I'm going to plant something positive. I'm going to plant the truth every single day. That's what I'm planting into the algorithm, right? That's what I'm planting into my life. That's what I'm planting into my toxic family situation. Right? I am not going to engage. I'm not going to say my lines. You can't make me. Right? That's my favorite thing. I'm an only child. I am an only child, and I'm bossy. And I used to like to say, you can't make me. Not to my mom, of course, because that was not true, but or to adults. But, you know, like with my cousins and stuff, you know, it's like, well, you can't make me. That was my thing. And I have to watch that, because that is like, well, you know, you want me to do something? Well, let's see. You can't make me do it. But we have to take some of that to really own ourselves, right? Lest we get swept up in this, in the cyclone, and it's only going to get more intense. That's why it's important to get anchored now, to practice now, because it's going to get more intense. This is not, I said this last year, I said this from the first time I was in a pulpit. I'm like, we're at the beginning of a roller coaster. I didn't know what was coming, but I've been saying that we are at the beginning of a roller coaster ride, and you need to get fastened in and get centered and anchored for what is coming. Right? And this is not a doomsday. I'm just talking, it is turbulent. Yes? And so, my beloveds, let me just say, to wrap this thing up, because I can feel a whole new talk coming on. Let me just say, get quiet, y'all. Get quiet so you can hear God. Right? Get quiet so you can hear God. Put stuff down. Back away from the table. Right? Get quiet so you can hear Spirit. Because God has all of the answers. Every answer that we are seeking in this world, God has it. Every answer that we're seeking in our lives, God has it. right? Every answer that we are seeking in our business, in our relationships, in our families, God has it. And we can only hear that voice, we can only hear that voice when we're quiet and when we cut through the noise, let it go. So let's turn within, shall we?